Hey everyone, this is Brooke, and welcome back to the Behavior Change Trio. In this series, I am defining 3 different types of behavior. And yes, there is more than one type of behavior, and describing how our messages and engagement strategies should be tailored for each type. We covered actions in the last post, and today we're diving into routines. This week, it's all about getting the audience ready to go on repeat. I'm going to be honest with y'all. The waters will start to get pretty murky here with routines and habits. So let's set some healthy expectations. We may not correctly distinguish routines from habits every single time, and that's okay. The intention here is to understand how these different behaviors feel to our audience, what their experiences are like, so we can provide the support, the tools, and the motivation they need most during those times. Let's dive in. Routines are tasks that we do regularly that take conscious effort, time, and thought to complete. Unlike actions, routines occur repeatedly within a year and can vary in frequency from daily to weekly to quarterly. Habits and routines can look very similar on paper. Habits are behaviors that we complete regularly on kind of autopilot, requiring almost little to no active thought to do them. Routines, on the other hand, require effort every single time we do them. Let's bring this to a personal level. Here is a list of behaviors I've been doing for most of my life that have never stopped being an effort to complete. Doing my laundry, putting away the clean laundry that I successfully did, cleaning literally any part of the house, meal planning, grocery shopping, exercising, changing the bed sheets, calling my parents, meditating. Do you know how I know these things are routines? Clue number 1 is that I have nearly all of these items scheduled in my calendar to push me to get them done. The fact that I have done these things for decades and they're still not on autopilot is clue number 2. Clue number 3 is that I need very little encouragement to push these tasks to another day. Very little. Now, while I would love for these things to become a habit one day, it's just not realistic for that to happen. These to-dos require too much time and intention to become muscle memory habits. Here's a quote from Nir Eyal, and I hope I'm saying his name correctly, who inspired all of these thoughts about different types of behavior in the blog post that he wrote that I shared in the introduction of this whole series. And the quote is, "We have to accept that only certain kinds of behaviors can become habits, and that certain behaviors will never become habits." End quote. We will revisit the idea that not all behaviors can become habits throughout the next 2 posts. So today's post and the next one on habits. So now that we know what routines are, how can we spot them in our projects? Here are a few indications that you have a routine lurking in your behavior change program. One indication is that you want the audience to complete the task repeatedly and consistently within a given time period or throughout the year. These steps may look like actions, but if you want the audience to repeat the step more than once a year, then it is very likely a routine. Ongoing engagement projects are most likely to have routines as we work to keep the audience involved in our work and we ask them to take action consistently. For example, if you want subscribers to consistently read your newsletters and click the link to listen to the audio version, then that's a routine. Hint, hint, that's kind of what's happened here. Well, if you're listening to this, it's because you successfully clicked that link in my newsletter. So another indication is if the step looks like a habit, but it's highly unlikely the audience can do it on autopilot right away. So this is a fine line where the waters get murky. So new behaviors like, let's say, composting food scraps, they can become habits, but they will look like routines at first because the audience is practicing and trialing the behavior until it becomes second nature or on autopilot. So it's helpful to be clear about the learning curve that exists for many behaviors before they can become habits. So there'll be routines and then habits. So here's another quote from Nir Eyal on that topic. Quote, "For those actions that can turn into habits, we can begin by making them into routines. As long as we know the difference between a habit, which in parentheses he puts a behavior done with little or no thought, and a routine, which is a series of actions regularly followed, we can plan accordingly and not be disappointed." End quote. I really like the aspect of not be disappointed. I think that's very true for us as the movers and changers on these projects, is not only setting expectations for the audience, but also for ourselves. So the third indication that you have a routine is that completing the task requires effort and thought every single time. This indication is true for routines that look like actions, but require repeated attendance, like joining quarterly Fisher Association meetings. More importantly, it highlights behaviors that will not transition from routines into automatic habits, maybe ever. To help identify these routines, consider if the steps require planning, intention setting, and reminders to complete, and would be totally tempting for the audience to skip if they could. In other words, does it feel like doing laundry or changing the sheets and exercising? If yes, those are clues that you may be asking the audience to adopt a routine. Habits are a type of routine, but not all routines become habits. That's my final quote from Nir Eyal for now. Let's get into barriers. The top 3 challenges audience members face with starting and sticking with routines are learning a new skill. Like, how in the world do I track and record how much fish I caught to share this with you every week or every day? Adopting sustainable practices is new for many people, which means our audience does not have the skills they need to get started. Learning a new skill can be very uncomfortable and awkward, leading to some audience members abandoning their efforts. A second barrier, procrastination. I'd rather do this thing tomorrow. The temptation to skip a routine or postpone it until next week is ever present, and it's actually one of the defining characteristics of a routine. Since these behaviors are often uncomfortable and inconvenient, we can easily convince ourselves to do it later. And the third barrier, consistency. I have to do this again? Didn't I just do it last week? Achieving actions is hard. We covered that last time. Achieving a series of actions regularly is even harder. Repetition is necessary for routines to produce the desired results. We need the audience to show up to the quarterly meetings, the training workshops, the webinars, and the volunteer activities. But the need for consistency can be exhausting and even overwhelming for the audience. So, given this set of barriers, messages for routine should boost the audience's confidence in starting a new sustainable practice. An outreach plan should be as consistent as we want the behavior to be. Audiences need to receive these 3 elements to start something new. The first is learning resources. Since most routines represent completely new practices for audience members, it's helpful to teach audiences how to do the behavior accurately. We can offer a series of training workshops for small groups and communities to learn new skills and practice them in a safe environment. If budget permits, it's great to provide audiences with a starter set of tools they can use back at home. We should ensure that all written instructions and learning materials are easy to understand and readily accessible to the audience. Creating videos or photo carousels demonstrating the desired behavior goes even further to help the audience follow directions and emulate the practice. Throughout the instructions and learning resources and trainings, we should make an effort to empower the audience to believe in themselves and their ability to successfully sustain these new practices. The second element is reminders. audience members are more likely to consistently repeat routines when we provide them with prompts, nudges, and reminders. This is similar to what audiences need to complete actions, but we don't actually have the time-limited scarcity aspect on our side with routines, unfortunately. However, we can still recommend ways the audience can remember to complete the step. You can suggest they save it to their calendar, like I do for all of the routines in my life, or use choice architecture to create prompts and nudges at home. Using multiple outreach touchpoints like email, social media, text messages, and more can be used to help keep the task top of mind for the audience. I think a lot of us see text messages are being used that way very frequently today as help us follow through on these things we need to do consistently. And also consider exploring ways you can switch up the content of the reminders, really the messages of those reminders, to keep the routine fresh and exciting. I often think of the Meatless Monday campaign as an example. Like, it is built for routines. Meatless Monday. It asks the audience to repeat the practice every Monday, which is easy to remember, and it uses social media and email to provide new ideas for meatless recipes to cook each week. And the final element I'll cover today is support and motivation. Our messages should support the audience's efforts and motivate them to keep going to prevent procrastination as much as possible and encourage consistency. The main way to do this is by reinforcing their capacity to make the desired change. These messages can build upon those initial learning sessions I mentioned earlier by maybe resharing resources that were shared previously, highlighting motivational sound bites, and providing top tips from people who are actually further along in that behavior change journey. Knowing that change is possible and within their reach helps sustain the audience's motivation through this routine time period. I recommend being real with your audience about the challenges of adopting new routines so that we're not purely sugarcoating it. We can share suggestions for overcoming procrastination or how to even restart the practice if they've fallen behind. Remind the audience why they started this journey in the first place. This will help them focus on the bigger picture and not get kind of disenchanted or disillusioned by setbacks. Consider if feedback loops can help the audience stay on track by providing updates on their progress and success rates. Feedback loops can include motivational instruments like streaks, which celebrate the audience's consistent use of a program or app. Duolingo is often celebrated for giving these kinds of feedback loops as streaks. Or, for example, you've used Duolingo to learn a new language for 50 days in a row. Congratulations. And guess what? I have written an entire blog about feedback loops and produced a how-to video on the topic. You can find those on my website at brooktully.com to learn more about what feedback loops are and how you can add them to your program. So I'll close out today by posting a question to all of you, or posing a question to all of you, sorry. What's on repeat for you? Think about the sustainability routines in your life. It can be meal planning to reduce food waste, bringing reusable bags to the grocery store, mending and repairing items you own, or anything else that comes to mind that you're trying to incorporate in your own life. Consider what would make it easier to complete those tasks in a timely and consistent manner. Besides, of course, having a robot army or clones to do them for you. And by the way, when are those getting here? I thought I was promised that by the year 2025. But more seriously, the ideas you dream up about how to make those things easier for you may not actually be so far-fetched and could potentially lead to real-world solutions for the routines that your audience face in their behavior change journey. If you want a second opinion on any of those ideas, please feel free to reach out to me. You can email me at brooke@brooktully.com. The final post in this series is going to be all about habits. Coming to your earbuds. I said earbuds. Coming to your earpods in 2 weeks. Thank you for listening. Take care.